you can make a ton of money in cryptocurrency by checking out these 3 altcoins that I'm going to cover in this video. And on my channel, if you look for the thumbnails I'm getting ready to show you right now, I show you why end of year bull run targets make sense. For example, for Multivac, I have this target that you can see behind me. Look for that thumbnail on my channel if you want to watch that video. Verasity, I have end of year targets. Look for the thumbnail that you can see behind me. And in this video here, I show you why $1,000 Trias, among other targets lower than 1,000, are very possible, and lower targets, for example, $300 to $500 in a bull run, are not just possible but probable. So check out those videos if you haven't already. And I also, for these 3 altcoins, give you weekly, sometimes daily updates. So go ahead and follow me on Twitter. My handle is Cosas Verdes with the number 2 after. Again, these are 3 of the altcoins that I give updates for most, perhaps with exception to Bitcoin. So in this video, what we're going to cover here today is we're going to focus on the 4-hour time frame, and we're going to relate price action to being in a fight in the UFC, because this market is a battle. People are trying to take your money. You're trying to take other people's money. This is a fight. So let's dive in so you can interpret the charts on how they really are and relate them to the real world. Are you ready? I am. Let's go. I ended with Trias on a previous video on these 3 assets, so we're going to begin with Trias on this one. What you're staring at here, besides price, so these lines that I have here for new viewers, these are what I call origin lines. These are not available on TradingView. And if you do not know how to set up a chart, okay, if you don't know how to set up a chart, I give you a free how-to video. It takes 45 minutes to do it, but that 45 minutes is essentially your tuition to the education on making money in cryptocurrency. I'm going to link it right here. This popping up right there. Go ahead and click that. If you don't know how to set up a chart, you need to leave this video. If you don't know how to set up a chart, click that, and we'll see you back here on this video. All right, so the lines here are EMAs. I manually made these, okay? A lot of people ask that question. The orange line is the 4-hour 200 EMA. The red line is the weekly 10. For each of these 3 assets, I have drawn in the weekly 10 EMA just for one reason, because you all know I think it's the most important EMA, perhaps, I mean, among the most important indicators of any. Like, it doesn't matter if it's the price of oil or black market testicles or whatever. It is very important. So you can see that the 4-hour 200 EMA rides that line. They're often very, very close to each other. So the 4-hour 200 EMA is also an extremely important line. And if you're on the 4-hour chart, it allows you to see the chaos within the weekly candle relative to the weekly 10, because the 4-hour 200 EMA is so close. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that red line, actually get this yellow line off, which I believe was a different 8-hour 21 EMA. And I'm not going to use this in this video. So what we're going to do here is this. For these assets, I'm going to show you essentially how this is a fight and how to interpret things so you can get a feel for how price moves. You need to know that price essentially has its own attitude, its own behavior. So if you get a feel for how something behaves, you're going to be able to understand when good buys and when good sells are. I'm not offering financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm showing you how to understand how these Pokemon cards, obviously we're not talking about Pokemon cards here, right? Showing you how to get a feel for this, okay? So we're going to put price back on. That orange line is the 4-hour 200 EMA. All right, so Trias, use that 4-hour, that orange line, which is, I'm just going to call it orange line, but know that it's 4-hour 200 EMA. And I showed you how to set up a chart if you're new and you're coming back to this video. Based off of it again, on the third pump, it was strong enough where buyers stepped in before that base, and then that bigger parabolic move up, it's not coincidental that it happened on the time that buyers stepped in earlier, because buyers were super ready, super anxious. They bought this up before it used it as support again and the parabolic move, and then immediately it failed it, use it as, so zoom in here. So here it was using as support, here buyer stepped in early, and here resistance. You see how previous support became future resistance. That's a common rule. It happens on EMAs, happens on horizontals, and it happens on origin lines. That's why I have, those are the exact 3 things I have on my chart, right? I have origin lines, I have horizontals, and I have an EMA. That's what we're looking at. Okay, so where's the fight? Well, essentially, if you take off price, and it's going to be a little easier to see with ribbons, and I might throw those on here in a second, but you could see how price was essentially below this line. If you could extend that line like that, it's below resistance, right? Okay. All right. So take off price. This bump in the 200 4-hour EMA is essentially like a punch, like an uppercut from buyers, right? So in the fight between buyers and sellers, it's an uppercut saying, go up, right? It's okay. See that? So that's how we're going to interpret this, and then we're gonna play with this analogy as we go along here. All right. So this is the first punch from the buyers. Okay, so you have buyers as one fighter in the Octagon, which Octagon is the ring for UFC, and this is the second punch from the buyers. So the buyers gave a 1-2 punch. And then essentially what happened after that is, after this next punch, when this was used as support, then this support didn't even, Price did not use this as support. So essentially you gave one punch, stunned the sellers, another punch, you essentially knocked down the seller. So that's somebody falling to the ground after getting punched a second time. And this is essentially those moments, if you've ever seen UFC fighting, when somebody punches and stuns it, even if they're knocked out, the fighter who hits the person who gets knocked down, he or she will go after that person and go for one last, like, finish him. If you ever played those fighting games back in the 90s when I grew up, finish him, right? It's the finish him thing, or finish her. I mean, women are vicious as shit. I honestly kind of like watching the ladies fights. They have more energy, like their lungs and heart work, their cardiopulmonary endurance is better, I feel. Lightweight men are pretty awesome too, but women are, I don't know, I like watching the women fight. Anyway, but it's that last moment where somebody gets knocked to the ground, like I showed you in the chart. It's that last moment where they come in and before the ref can, like, stop it. Sometimes the ref can get in there before the last punch as the person's knocked out. So imagine, like, being already knocked out and somebody not only punches you in the face while you're on the ground, but they're running and jumping and flying in the air and punching you in the face. That's what this is what you're seeing in the charts. I'm serious. As weird as it sounds, this is that moment. So imagine sellers on the ground already knocked out from this punch, right? From this punch, and you can see that punch and the lift. So see how the two here, let me get that off of there. So see how it lifts up? That's the punch that knocked it out, and the sellers fell. And then this extreme price action is that last moment where the buyers run and jump, they're flying in the air, and this section here is when that person lands the punch on the person who is already knocked out. That is exactly what's happening. So what we're going to do in the chart here for all three of these coins is we're going to try to relate that idea, okay, so you can get a feel for what Price is doing, so you can better determine if your favorite altcoin is going to drop or if it's going to go up. That's what we're going to cover in the rest of this video. So before we get in there, do me a quick favor. Your phone right now is horizontal and maximize screen. Flip your phone or get flipped off. Hey, Tim, what does that mean? It means flip your phone vertically so you can see the like button. Hit like for me. It's going to help me continue making videos for you. And what's going to help me out even more, if you leave me a quick comment, even if it's just leaving a simple period without the tampon, or you let me know if you sleep with the fan on, or you say tacos. Do you want tacos or donuts? Let me know which one of those two you want in the comment section. It doesn't matter. Just help the algo, help me help you. And what's going to help me out to help you even more? Guess what? If you hit the bell and you subscribe, hitting the bell allows me to present time sensitive information to you, because without the bell, there's no time sensitivity, and this is time sensitive. So help me help you. We're in this together. All right, let's jump back into the charts. Okay, so how can we relate this to current price history? Well, I mean, it's a little hard to relate that analogy to, when everything corrected with Wyckoff, the Wyckoff pattern on Bitcoin essentially tanking from 58K down to 29K. But you can essentially say the winning fighter left the ring, and this is like commercials. Everybody hates commercials. That's what this is. Essentially, the fighter's resting, and that's what you got. So yeah, no one likes commercials, and this is your commercial break. Okay. So the fighter typically, for the next round after the commercial break, another fighter comes in, or the same fighter after several months, however it goes. But you can see here that Price was able to, again, use this level as support after a long journey down. See that? It popped right up. And do you think it's a coincidence? It was at the very bottom origin line and on this ever so important line. No, it's not a coincidence. It works like this for a reason. Do I know the reason? I don't. All right. So I don't actually know why, but I know the what. And That's really all we need to know. Why does price go up and down? We don't know. It's just more buyers than sellers, or more sellers than buyers. That's the only reason. But we don't know the why within there to a specific degree all the time, right? So sometimes you can tell that a YouTuber talked about something or whatever, because there's nothing in the chart saying it's going to go up. It just flies up. So sometimes there is a why. Anyway, so I will admit that sometimes YouTubers or release of news, I mean, you can see it in the chart that, oh shit, it went up for no reason. Okay, that was news. All right. Okay. So but usually most moves up. You can see it in the chart before it happens. All right. So this is another big cut. So see the orange line, how it pushes up here. So this is just a massive, like, pummeling punch of buyers. So the buyers, you know, commercials, and the next fight starts. This is essentially like after the commercial break, right? And you have two fighters in the ring. This is the buyers. So buyers as a fighter. So commercial break ends. Take off price. This big hump is not one, uppercut. This is one fighter. The buyer's coming in and just swinging, putting all his or her energy into it. And guess what happens either to a fighter or to buyers, like, not so kind of breaking the analogy, but also keeping it together. Both buyers and sellers, whoever starts coming out swinging like crazy, and a fighter, his or herself, you have to do what? After you give all that effort right away in an explosive move, what do you have to do? You have to rest. So after this explosive move up, after at the beginning of the fight, commercial break, bam, you have to take a rest. Were the sellers winning? Yeah. I mean, this dip below, the sellers got a good punch. This dip below, sellers got a good punch, but the tables didn't turn. Right? It's just this person had to sell, maybe, kind of back up, take a few punches, whatever. And then after resting for how many days? Let's see how many. So on the chart, that's 55 days of rest. Okay. A fighter, buyers as a fighter, they're ready to go up again. And boom, you get a little mini baby punch here. Kablam. That's like a nice jab that lands. You see the person stunned, and then boom. This is when, so is this the person, did the sellers get knocked down on the ground flat? No, but this is a jab that landed. The buyer saw an opening and really attacked hard. And after attacking hard, what does a fighter or a group of buyers have to do? You have to rest. So it's natural that after this big pummeling, it takes a lot of energies. The buyers are simply resting. And as that fighter, the buyer, so the buyer as a fighter, the winning party right here, is resting, you have to take a few punches. So this dip below the 4 hour 200 EMA is just taking a punch. But right now, the resting upon it is like blocking punches, or diverting punches or whatever. So you can imagine after this nice, pump here, there's going to be some form of rest in which maybe there are some punches landed during the resting, but you're not going to get the pummel action, all the energy in an explosive move. And I'm getting ready to show you this on Verasity and Multivac as well. It's very, very similar stuff. Although the charts are slightly different, you can see the same type of analogy in there. It's going to be pretty cool. This is an octagon. This is the octagon. All right. Anyway, so buyers and sellers step into that might be my title of this. Anyway, so there are multiple ways of resting. The only thing is, just don't expect a pummeling happen. So during resting, you can land some jabs, but on this particular chart, when can you expect the next pummeling to happen from Trias buyers getting ready to slam the face of sellers? Okay, there is a specific level. Let me show you. It's this horizontal right here. Really, it's just all-time highs. It's the wick high. So essentially, why do I always press that button? Essentially, it's going to rest, probably land some punches, but no pummeling action until a break out of here. And once price gets above previous all-time highs, you can fully expect some type of pummel action about like this. Maybe not as hot as this. All right. That's usually because the sellers haven't been stunned yet. You have to stun the sellers first. So don't expect something like this. Rather, you're going to expect a few punches that in turn could stun, but you might expect something like this or something like this, a nice right hand hook from a right-hander. Not that, Tim, are you prejudiced against lefties? No, I'm not. My third child, she is left-handed and my mom was left-handed. So anyway, okay. So no, I'm not prejudiced. All right. Against lefties, but let's just say right hand punch. punch. So you might get a right hand punch right away, or you might get some of these after a breakout of the line. But after a few of these are landed, then the sellers are stunned. The sellers just give up, and then you could expect that big move after a while, but not at this line, not at all-time high line of about 30 bucks. Don't expect the pummeling to happen right away. That's what you can expect. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you the same type of thing on the next two cryptos. I'm going to move into Verasity next. Verasity has a little bit more price history. It's going to be a slightly different journey. So let's dive in. Stay tuned, Trias people, because what's applying, how Verasity is fighting right now will apply to Trias sooner than later. I totally promise you. The charts are totally different. So get the practice in, take some punches in the face, get used to the stimuli. If I can keep the fighting analogy going here, stay tuned for this, Trias folks. And at the end, I'm going to give you a little bonus. So let's move on to Verasity. All right. I was going to give you the hand action again. I was like, no, I already did that. It'd get corny. Don't overuse things, Tim. I mean, come on now. All right. Okay. So again, Verasity, I'm going to take off price. I'm on the 4-hour chart. I've also drawn in the weekly 10 EMA so you can see how they ride each other. Okay. So, and that's a fighting analogy, not an intimate analogy. Like writers, or fighters ride each other in different ways. There's multiple, or in wrestling, there's multiple ways to ride your opponent. All right. So in a fighting analogy specifically. All right. So that's what we're looking at here. Now, actually, so all of this area here, this was bear market. So it's a little bit different. So this is essentially a fighter training before his or her first fight ever. Does that make sense? So this is just training time, right? And the fight begins, I don't know, let's say about here, and the fighter steps into the octagon, makes his or her appearance while getting over the 4-hour 200 EMA, right? So this is kind of like the fight begins, ding, 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 the bell rings, and the fighters don't come out and start swinging right away, but that's one of those more normal fights where there's not a lot of activity quite at the beginning, maybe some jabs. They figure out how each fighter opens up, where the weaknesses are, how they expose each other. The fighters are just, the buyers and sellers are figuring each other out, and this is around the time when Bitcoin was getting hot. So this is when essentially altcoin season had the potential. So you can see this date here, this line is November, right when Bitcoin was getting hot, right? Starting to make its ascent right up to 20K to meet all-time highs. Bitcoin started getting hot, had a nice monthly closure, ding, 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 the bell begins. And so the fighters are feeling each other. Actually, I have these lines here. I don't know what these are for, but it's actually going pretty well with this analogy. And here is where the buyers, so take off price, just look at that line. You can see that hump there, that is an uppercut. So because the next move was even bigger, and you were able to land, price was able to get above and a big uppercut and use this as support, that essentially is the same as a nice right hook that landed. The seller fighters are stunned, and you get a lot more punches in right away. So is this quite as aggressive as Trias's, parabolic move, where it's the analogy of a flying punch to the face when you're already knocked out? Not quite, but this is pretty close to where the ref might start the fight with somebody standing up, but with his or her hands down, getting punched in the face. So you can see this, right? I mean, it took buyers. So what's happening here in this analogy, but specific to buyers and sellers and price action, is this. This big punch up from buyers, it's essentially when sellers gave up. So you have three groups of people, how I've done many times on this channel. You have sellers, you have buyers, and you have sideliners, right? Okay. So you had a lot of sideliners. So sideliners are people who are just maybe hodlers who haven't thrown more money into it, or people who just aren't putting their money in crypto yet, or whatever the case. They're people who have tethers sitting on sidelines who are in crypto, this and that. This doesn't involve also retail. Okay, so this punch right here is the punch. So let me zoom in. That is the punch that made a lot of sellers either convert to buyers or to stop selling and turn into sideliners. But either way, the vector of force, the force with which people were selling, fewer people were now selling, and the vector of force became smaller. So you go from this vector, because these vectors are about even. So you see how price was kind of neutral here, right? That means these two arrows are about the same size. After this punch, the sellers get stunned in the octagon. So these sellers, some of them start to give up, right? Okay, so the vector of force becomes like this, much smaller than the up arrow. See how it's smaller now? Because a lot of sellers either immediately became buyers, or a lot of them became sideliners, but people stopped selling. So that is the same thing as a fighter getting stunned, which allows the other fighter to really go in and make a lot of hits. Okay, gosh, I really hope I'm making sense here, because this is really how price is interpreted. It has a behavior. It behaves a certain way. And if you could tell, but not only does price behave a certain way, but within its behavior, you have two different parties behaving one way, right? So when the sellers get tired or punched in the face and stunned, that's when, a lot of buyers, even if there aren't more buyers, just the same buy pressure, right? The same fighter without having taken, a nap and a snack right before the fight, just the same fighter with the same amount of energy can make all of this happen, right? So yeah, during this move, the buyers were probably slightly tired after, getting these punches in, but the same amount of energy, because the sellers got knocked out, the buyers were really able to take over. And so the buyers won the fight. This is the commercial area. Everybody hates commercials, so that's what that is. I'm glad I was able to come up with that part of the analogy, because when I was thinking about what I was going to say on this, I couldn't figure out, like, what the hell am I going to say here? All right, this is just a freaking commercial. No one likes it. No one likes getting, a down move. No one likes whales manipulating Bitcoin, which brings down everything, which is the Wyckoff pattern. So that's just our freaking commercial break right before the show begins. And so the next fight began right here. So is it weird that it's exactly has to do with the 4-hour 200 EMA? No. The fight begins when you can get above the 4-hour 200 EMA, which is super similar to the most important EMA in all of any market price. The weekly 10 EMA. It's not a coincidence that this is the way it moves. Okay. I promise you. That's why you need to know how to set up a chart. So you can determine when a YouTuber is talking about something, whether it's, like it previously, like OMI. That's how I knew to tell people, dudes, get out of OMI. That's why I made clickbait videos trying to convince people not to be buying Burnonomics. Because it was too far above the 4-hour 200 EMA, and it was too far above the weekly 10 EMA, it was going to come. And when you get too far above something, when you need to use it as support and you're too high above, you crash through it. The volatility maintains, right? That's why you got to take breaks, right? So anyway, but it's not a coincidence that this is when the fight began, right? When it stuck its landing on here, ding, 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 the fight begins. All right. So this is another. So right when the show began, oddly enough, again, on this asset, buyers just take off price. Look how big of a push up this is. This is multiple punches. But the sellers had a strong chin. So even though it might have been stunned, this is like a fighter, so the sellers here were a fighter with a strong chin, didn't get knocked out, landed a couple punches on here, and then the buyer again went on a big rampage and got a lot of hits in. Now the buyers are resting and are taking a few punches as he or she circles the ring. That's pretty much what's happening here. But in terms of sustainability of a move up, it's good that the buyers are taking a rest, taking a breather after putting in big aggressive moves. So this one's moving a little bit differently in regard to you're doing a big set, big push, and then rest. Big push, rest. Trias is not quite behaving the same, and neither is Multivac, which I'm going to cover next. So each of these are acting a little bit differently, but Verasity is given it's almost like if you're running and you practice running or run to lose weight. This is almost like the HIIT theory, high intensity interval training, HIIT. So it's essentially this chart on Verasity is doing the HIIT training as opposed to running the same velocity for a long amount of time. It is sprinting for 30 seconds, then resting, sprinting. So if that's the trend, what can you imagine this will do? And when will it happen, right? So what I'm going to show you next is when you can expect the next HIIT training. I think it's going to be over this line. So I think that Verasity is going to go on a jog, maybe land a few punches, but the next time it puts in a lot of big hits is whenever it gets above this origin line here. I'm telling you, that's probably when it's going to happen, and it's going to take price up to this next origin line, right? So it's going to put in now what could happen though this chart is indicating it might not jog up to here. All right, it might start moving up fairly aggressively, and then a really aggressive hit starts after it passes there. So if this trend, continues, it's going to do something like that. So it might not have much trouble getting above here per how its hit interval trading is going. It looks like the type of run it's doing, hit interval trading, I would expect it to continue the same. So because this line here, so this line that I'm highlighting, or that's a bad one right there, okay? So let's zoom into it. It's already been tested once, twice, 3 times. So this is a big retest and a test here. On the third try, it'll likely break above, which does align from a charting standpoint. The idea that the next time up, it could fly past it on its first or second try without coming far down at all. It might fly past. And so the end of year targets, if Bitcoin can behave and go up in December, I think this line, so this white line here that's going up and down the vertical line, that's a Happy New Year, right? That's January 1st. Well, it's actually January 12th, but whatever. Let's move it over. So because this line will be the point where Verasity buyers need to take a rest after pummeling the sellers, I could see this as your speed limit on how many hits you can give out, about 20 cents, 20 to 22 cents, maybe a wick above, could get to like 24 cents, maybe, right? But that's what we're looking out for. Based on the theory, it's going to do hit interval trading, come up, and then have to rest. That's probably what you can look out for, and that's how this animal is behaving. So what we're going to jump into next, Verasity people, I'm going to move on to Multivac, but Multivac and Trias people who are still with me here, I hope you are, because Multivac's behaving in an even different way. So let's jump into Multivac and kind of, keep the Octagon or the UFC analogy, the fighting analogy, and let's get this practice in. Let's get this boxing practice in together. All right. All right. So let's move on to Multivac. Okay. So again, the red line here, right? That's the weekly 10 EMA. Look how tightly knit these two EMAs are. You see that? Okay, so I'm going to delete that line. Take off price so we can just look at where's the first punch? Okay, so if this is all bear market over here, right? And right here is where Bitcoin, so let's mark off November. The fight starts about right here. Ding, ding, ding. Okay. All right, roughly then. No, about November, right there. Okay. All right, so let's put price on. That's when the fight begins. That's when altcoin season essentially had permission. Whoa. And I didn't plan that. So oddly enough, that is right when. So this is a different exchange of punches. So this is a scenario. So let's move this over. So the fight begins, ding, ding, ding. It is not a coincidence that right about where I drew that line, right when I knew Bitcoin was starting to get hot, that's when MTV got above this line and just stuck the landing. And I promise you, that's why it's so important to know how to say, even if you're a hodler, it doesn't matter. You need to know this stuff so your expectations can be correct. Your expectations, even if you're not a trader, the value you can get out of my channel is forming correct expectations so you know what to think like this week so you can sleep easily, okay? Like even if you never plan on selling when I give good sell targets or whatever, right? It's going to be valuable to you in terms of how you wake up in the morning if you're looking at charts all the time but not clicking around and taking action on it, okay? Do you see what I'm saying? How fast, like it helps answer the question, how fast am I going to get rich, all right? Essentially, okay. So this fight from here to here, from here to here is an exchange of punches. So the buyers came out, landed punches first, okay? Maybe no rest, but then the sellers actually landed more punches. The sellers landed a lot of punches there. So this is one of those, especially lightweight fighters, or actually heavyweights come out pretty freaking strong too, actually, sometimes. Actually, maybe even more often than lightweight. Just lightweights can hang a lot longer. But anyway, so this was a very, very exciting beginning of a fight. Do you see what I'm seeing here? So the fighters come out. So the buyer lands the first several punches. The seller's not knocked out or stunned. Then the seller comes back, lands some punches. And then the buyers landed a punch that stunned. Do you see that? Big. See how that? So that's like an uppercut, right? So it's just kaboom. And that stunned the sellers. So in your vector of force, remember, you have three reasons, three things that make price move: buyers, sellers, and sideliners. So this price action, and this is without price on it. I don't know what price looks like. I can give a guess. It probably did something like that and maybe wicked under and then came up. But actually, let's put price on. There you go. See? Ha. All right. But anyway, so this stunning punch, essentially, if you want to relate it to the real world now, outside of the analogy, but keeping the analogy in mind, a lot of the group of sellers. So during this time, buyers and sellers, these arrows were about the same size. Price went sideways, right? It was a good fight. After this punch, okay, the buyers wore out the sellers. And even if there weren't actually more buyers, it doesn't matter. That punch made a lot of buyers convert themselves straight from sellers immediately to buyers, or straight from sellers to sideliners. Therefore, you have fewer sellers. Even if there aren't more buyers on the table, no more buyers stepped in, just the same amount, the sell pressure is now less. Therefore, a big move up can happen. That is what is happening here. Now, could it be a mixture of both? It could be. So a mixture of both is when the seller vector arrow gets smaller and the buyer arrow gets bigger. That happens. And that's why things go parabolic, because that's when retail comes in. So it's when sellers give up and more buyers step in. That's when things get real hot. And let's look at what MTV did. This is actually what happened on MTV. Kablam. So, I mean, this got really hot, and this is where I was buying at one point. I even made a video in my car about it. Don't believe me? Go back and look at like my early channel before I even knew how to YouTube or use a microphone or whatever, before I had sexy thumbnails. Hey, Tim, I have a question for you. All right, what's your question? Who's that guy behind you? I was like, that's me. Like, no, it's not. He's way better looking than you. All right, anyway. All right, so let's dive back into this. Okay, so that is why, that is the explanation of how price can do this, right? So this is essentially retail stepping in, or just, this is an example of not only did sellers get knocked out here, right? So this seller vector got smaller, but the pressure increase also got bigger at the same time. New people came in. It could have been bots for this first one. I don't know. My channel wasn't big enough to make this shit happen. I had like 2,000 subs. I wasn't even monetized at that time, right? But I promise you, I gave you the heads up, and I got a 36x from my exact buy to my exact sell. I think this did a 45. So this asset did a very interesting run. It went roughly 45x in 45 days, and I got 30. I experienced with my buy and sell a portion of 36 of that 45, which is really good. You don't ever expect to buy bottoms and sell tops, right? But I did buy this bottom here, right? Technical bottom here. So I was buying about right there. And look at the percentage and look at the amount of days. Well, shit. Oh, no. I got it wrong. No, I actually did sell close to the top. That's weird. So it did 39x in 36 days. That is insane. And I sold at 1.12 cents. And even though it wicked up higher, and I had a lot of, so that at that time I had a lot of new patrons, and I gave the sell target of a penny, then helped them understand, wait, there's no bearish divergence, maybe go up a little, sell a little higher or whatever. Although the alert was a little late, it was already right at a penny. A lot of people selling, but still, a penny was still a great time to sell. Here, for perspective, here's a penny. Was that a good time to have sold so you could buy back later? Yeah. You wait for a 50% dip. Kablam, you got a 70% dip. I'm not saying you could have bought this, but just make a goal. Okay, I'll buy it when it's on sale, half off. Bam, buy it there, right? And but at the time I had a lot of new patrons. They're like, why did you, why did you say you're selling at a penny and you sold at 1.12 cents? Well, I used techniques that I've given you, like tools that I've given you. There was no bearish divergence. It all happened so fast. Like, that's when you use tools for yourself too, instead of relying on somebody to hold your hand. But I did have a lot of new people at the time, so I probably could have given an alert on that. And I was learning too. I was new to this as well. But the point is, though, that when stuff like this happens and you have a sell target, if you don't see things like bearish divergence, that's when you can go in and like move up your sell targets, which is what I did. All right, so now, this was the commercial break. No one likes commercials, aka Wyckoff and whales manipulating Bitcoin for their own gains. Okay, great. All right, when does the next fight begin? When price gets above the orange line. It's that freaking simple. And guess what this did again? The buyers came out swinging like crazy. Big set of punches. Landed a lot of punches. Now, what do the buyers have to do? They have to rest. Where are they resting? On the bed they already created, this wick high. Resting right on this beautiful, cushiony bed. They're just resting. And what do you think will happen next? Whenever Bitcoin and Ethereum allow for it to happen, okay, whenever it is allowed to happen, the buyers have a strong chance of just coming out swinging. But what is it that you need to look out for? It's simply price getting back above the orange line and using it as support first and then going. That is specifically what you can look out for. Okay, I'm telling you, that's just the way it works. Hey, new viewers, if you want to make more money by learning a simple, super easy trick, you want to watch the video that's going to pop up right here. And returning viewers, if you want to up your game and put in a little bit more time and learn some tricks that'll earn you more money in crypto, you are going to watch this video here. New viewers, you want to watch this video here, super simple trick that's popped up right here. And returning viewers, learn a more complex trick right here. We're in this together. Go make some more money. Why are you still here? New viewers, make more money here. Returning viewers, make more money here. You're still here. Why?